And I got to say, it's Laurel's a hard act. But my presentation will be on a style of goldsmithing called the Machinado de Oro. And the Machinado is a very old, it's a Spanish word for it, it's machine. And it's a very old style that I discovered in Spain. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to show you where it came from. So this, if you have not been to Madrid, is the Royal Palace. As you're walking back from the opera. Actually, that is only one of the four wings of the Royal Palace in Madrid, because nobody does gaudy and ostentatious like Renaissance Spain. Except gaudy, which by the way would be Barcelona and later the Renaissance. Also in Spain. So as you come forward and you turn to the left, you look down to the main part of the Royal Palace, or looking right down in front. And as you walk down farther, seems like a half a mile, you get to the King's personal cathedral, the Church of St. Almudena, which is right across the square from the rest of the Royal Palace, separated by this beautiful ironwork fence. And if you turn to the other side, you're putting the camera through the fence. This is the parade courtyard. This is actually the front entrance of the palace. And it's absolutely beautiful. Interesting here, you can see two statues here, four statues here. These are statues of the Aztec and the Inca statues.
Thank you very much.
And they put statues of the Spanish conquered people, in addition to the usual 12 apostles and things. But if you're in this courtyard right here, I love it's so decadent. These are all gilded lampposts. But if you look to the left, as you're in the courtyard, you see this tiny little door over here, and this little tiny building over here. And through this gateway, you look out on the King's personal hunting ground, the Campo del Moro, which goes on for like 10 miles in the middle of Madrid. It is just amazing. Now it's all public access. It was prohibited, King's private hunting ground, and it's still for it. But now they have some well-developed paths and things there. But that little door right here is the entrance to the Royal Armory. So of all the rooms that the public has access to in the Royal Palace in Madrid, this is where I spent the majority of my time. So you have the top floor and you have the bottom floor. But the top floor is quite remarkable because you're greeted with something like this as you walk through. And you see not just the priceless tapestry in the background, but a statue or a mannequin of Carlos V, and some of the armor on horseback, and you see more armor here on the side. But I walked into this. I remember the very first time I walked into this, and it was absolutely overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming, and just, SBA total nerdgasm. It was really phenomenal, and seeing these things that you see in books, and you don't really have an appreciation of, oh, that's cool, and then to see it in real life. If you ever get a chance, this, the Museum of Modern Art, of course, the Wallace collection, there's some really phenomenal collections of armor still in existence. So please do. This is one of my favorites, and this is on display. This is called the KD suit. In fact, you can appreciate the armor that Ugo ended up making for me. But one of our original thoughts was let's do this to the KD suit. And we abandoned it for this one, and I'm okay. Deep down with that decision, I felt I've been at peace with it.
But you're going to get that.
So this is one of the pieces that drew my attention. And so a lot of the thing, as I'm sure you guys do, with whatever your particular geek section of the SBA or arts and sciences is, when you see something that's interest to you or that you know a little bit about, you really want to get a good look at it. So one of the first things is the shield by the Negroli workshop in Milan in about 1535. And the shield is displayed with a helmet too. And so you have this beautiful Repoussé lion and the helmet, also Repoussé in shape of Carlos V, for Carlos V. I can't imagine, I'm sure Ugo can tell us much more about the kind of work it would take to do this in high quality steel, by the way. This is not a copper Repoussé. And then, but I look at this and I say, okay, here, this is, I say, oh, that's gilded. You know, and you have this beautiful collar. It's etched into the Order of the Golden Fleece, a pretty prestigious order. And then so I look all of this here, and here's the master's garniture. You look off to the left of here, and there's one of the stands. And they're all out in the open, which, by the way, I found out they have proximity sensors. Did I set them up? Well, as it turns out, they have proximity sensors, and it's actually it's forbidden to take pictures inside the Royal Armory. So you're probably wondering how I got here. Well, after hours of being in the Royal Armory, the first time I was there, I don't know where Becca went, my guard had left. And I was getting texts every once in a while, and then she ate lunch and she came back. And finally she dragged me out. But what I did find out is if you go during a weekday, it's not cheaper, but there's not as many people until school time. And then they just start carting the school loads of kids through all these field trips. So, if you want a picture, what you do is you stand by something you want a picture of until there's children around. Then you set off the proximity alarm. The guards and the teachers will make a big fuss of hustling the children away. You have to overcome. This is a mask garniture, a beautiful suit, also by the Rolling Workshop for Carlos V. And as you get a little closer, you see again some of this beautiful work, and especially in the gold and in the detailing. I look at this like, that's gilded. I can appreciate how that was done. I'm learning how to do it myself. I'm not a big fan of mercury vapor, but as it works out, it turns out beautiful. But I say, what is this? This is something different. So I got very close and set off the proximity alarm. And I look at a picture of this and I say, I don't know what this is, and it's clearly gold. And I had the index of the collection in the armory, which is all in Spanish, but it's just this tiny little mention. I don't know if you ever tried using museum index, but they're not overwhelmingly useful. And I said, what is this? Because it's clearly gold, it's very beautiful, it's very fine detail, and it's clearly not gilded. So I recognize gilding, and I appreciate that. So I look at these, go back to these, and I said, that's gilded. That's gilded. These probably also gilded, painted in the mercury gold compound, right? And then the mercury evaporates off, and you get the gold that stays. But what about this? This was right next to it, this sword. And just a little protected, little hand, a little part of the hilt. And I say, this is obviously if I zoomed in as much as I could and get some detail, this is clearly not gilded. So how are they doing this? What is that and how are they doing that? And then you look at some more of the Negroli pieces. Now look here, that's a nice sword. Is that not beautiful? The work on it, you can see some of the gold work going up the blade as well. You know, but they put it next to this. And it's just not the same. This, by the way, is a shield also done by the Negroli Workshop in Milan in 1544, Carlos V. This cost 300 ducats. Thank you very much. 300 ducats for this. And as it turns out, we have records about how much that is. This is just for the shield, okay? Not for the rest of the set. Just for the shield, 300 ducats. And it was the average salary of an extremely skilled artisan was somewhere between 4 and 6 ducats a year. So 300 ducats for that. And I got a little bit closer to look at some of the detail, some of this beautiful work. Clearly the same as I was seeing on the furniture, also from the Negroli Workshop, but very different than gilding. And you see, the wear patterns are a little bit different here as well. Now, actually, the wear patterns are quite different because I found out almost all these pieces of armor were black when they were made. They were more like this than they were like this. And 400 years of very enthusiastic museum curators have polished all the black off. And so most of the armor that you see now that we picture a suit of armor probably wasn't bare metal like that because of the oxidation. They protected it by blacking. So, Damascus. So I asked for some people to talk, and one of the many visits that I spent. And they said, oh, that's Damascus. And I said, oh, I have no idea what that means. But thanks, right? And I had them write it down for me. And so then I'll write it down. Okay, well, I can do a Google search, right? Which is really piss poor on this particular subject. There's very little information useful. There's a little bit about it. Well, I'm taking a soft metal like gold and silver, and I'm putting it onto a harder metal. I'm like, well, inlay. I understand inlay. Is it like a wire inlay? Because I can do a channel and vary a wire in the channel. I understand this kind of traditional type of inlay, or like the forge welding of a piece of silver onto a sword blade or something. I can understand this, but what is different about this? So I asked, and they said, well, and I'm looking around, it says it's actually very old. So you have examples from the classical times, classical Greece, Egypt, and Roman examples. So it's a very, very old style. So this is an example. This is one of the earliest examples we're aware of. Sorry, I'll step this aside a little bit. This is from a Mycenaean dagger. There, one of the right there. But this is what, 1600 BC. So, and you see, it's the same type of thing. You see the same gold work, a little bit of silver, more gold, right? Very different style than what I was seeing in the Renaissance. That's hardly, difficult to imagine, but very, very old. Very old technique. This is the only piece I could find from the Egyptian, and this is interesting for a number of reasons, because this is very old Damascene, maybe 2,000 years old or 3,000 years old. This is Damascene. This is wiring. That's the channel and the cut. As this, you see how it's raised, and you still see the wires and the pearls. There are probably more pearls in here. They could have been designed just better, but probably there are little silver pearls or gold pearls in there as well. But that's an Egyptian example. And if you look, you actually see there's this done in Japan as well. And actually, it's still done in Japan. And I had a great talk with Vic about he's seen some of the techniques that they use on the suva in Japan to use it. They also mix it with shipazugan, but that, I don't know if you're familiar with champleve, which is where you kind of dish out a little section, or repousse a little section, or chase a little section in what you're doing. So you have a little dish, and then you fill that dish with the enamel. And there's a bunch of great examples of that in the medieval period. But that's closer to what Japan's doing. Of course, you can imagine the style is very, very different. So a very different style with the Mycenaean piece, and then with the Japanese piece, this is a period example as well. This little box, but the aesthetic completely different, of course. But the technique is very, 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 very similar, even though the aesthetic and the look ends up being different. So I said, well, where else can I go? Where else am I getting it? Because this is clearly Spanish. Spanish and Italian, very popular in the Renaissance. And they told me there's 2 cities in Spain that still do it. And one is Ibar. And Ibar, as it turns out, as I found out, has 6 people still doing it. The entire town has 6 people, and they do almost exclusively firearms. So their style is a much more modern style. I see foul, and I see plants and things like that. A little bit of the Renaissance influence here. You see with some of the scroll work, right? But a very modern aesthetic, and so they do very high-end gold work and silver work, Damascene on the firearm, almost exclusively. So if you see a piece that is firearm, the odds are it did come from Ibar. And the other one is Toledo. This is a picture I took of Toledo, obviously at night, from a hill across the river, and they call this the Imperial City. And the Imperial City of Carlos V. They call it for a couple of reasons. You're familiar with the Imperial Eagle? So the Imperial Eagle, they say, because the city, tail, wings, and then the cathedral and the Alcazar are the 2 heads of the eagle. So, and Toledo is the other place. And so Toledo is a town of about 60,000 or so in and around. There's an old town and a decent amount of surrounding area. But as it turns out, in Toledo, there are only 43 people doing Damascenado still, and they're worried about that a lot because the youngest turned 40 last week. So they're very concerned on some level about this particular art dying out because it's been practiced there for a long time. This is a shop in Toledo, and Toledo is famous for their Damascenado, and rightfully so. So I wanted, so I was here and I wanted to learn. I said, I want to learn the machinado. I want to learn this technique because nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it. I mean, we have some amazing craftsmen, in this room. Some phenomenal craftsmen, but nobody's doing this. So why is nobody doing this? Why did nobody in the SBA before go through this book or something similar and say, wow, that's really cool, what's that? And can I learn how to do it? And the answer is I don't know. But that's what I did. I looked, I saw this beautiful, I said, nobody's doing this. This looks really neat. So the first thing I had to do was learn Spanish. So I learned Spanish. Then I found a teacher. Now, the teacher, so this is my web search. I mean, it's almost... It's quite remarkable. I won't connect right now. I'll wait time. But do it sometime because it's really not much. Like, I'll just do a web search like anything else and learn the process and then go home and practice it. Maybe find somebody who can do it, right? Well, I found almost nothing. There's a better picture, Julia. So I found almost nothing. And I was on jewelry forums. I was all over. Does anybody know the machinado de oro? Does anybody know who could teach me this? Does anybody know? Is there anybody I can learn this from? And I found one girl named Karen Jones who was a jewelry teacher living in Nova Scotia. But as serendipity has it, or happiness works out, she had just accepted a job in Vancouver, BC, teaching at one of the colleges there. So she said, well, I'll be there this summer if you want to. And so I went, and I sat down and I learned from her, and I ended up learning this technique that I used on, this is my daughter's rapier hilt. So you can kind of see how it stands up to a bunch of use, exactly. And then I got a little bit better, and I did one for me.
Children are always good for test cases.
Children are excellent for test cases. But that was all. So I practiced, and I got to a point where it was kind of cool, right? I was getting the process to work. I had to learn how to make the foil. I had to do all this stuff and learn how to put it on and the blacking and finish work. But I kept looking at the pieces that I got in Spain and the pieces that I had seen in Spain, and I could not get away from it. It did not look like that. It did not look like that. So I started calling around in Spain and by email and all over, looking. I went through Toledo and looking through. Is there somebody that can teach me? Is willing to teach me? And I got no, about 20 no's. And then I got one. We could talk about this. How much time do you have? I'm like, if you're going to teach me this, I'll learn, I'll take the time. And you need me to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in Spain. I'll take the time off work when I can afford it. As soon as I can afford it, I'll go down. And they said, minimum 2 years. I said, that's a bummer. So I started showing them the pictures. I showed them pictures of the stuff that I had done. I said, look, I found somebody in Canada who was teaching me, and they were very excited about that. There was a big uproar about they didn't know anybody outside of Spain other than Japan and a couple of places that was doing this. And so they said, okay, well I will. Look, I'm not coming in from ground zero. Look, I've done this stuff, we're doing this stuff, and then I showed them the armor and some of the pieces that we had done at that point. I said, this is what I want to do, showing them pictures of the Negroli pieces, and they didn't believe it existed. They absolutely did not believe it existed. What I finally got is these two here. This gentleman's name is Oscar, and this is Antonia, and this is one of his master's students. And Oscar and Antonia said, okay, they said, we're going to do it because you know something already, because it looks like a good project, and we really don't want our art to die out. So if we can get it to jump the ocean, is the phrase that they use. If we can teach somebody, we hope that this art form will jump the ocean and will survive, because that's what I found out. They're only 43, and the youngest was Oscar at the time, who was 38 years old. So we're 37, something like that. So they agreed to teach me. This, by the way, is exactly this is your little bit of your moment of zen. Everywhere I took it, the doors open. So I got to meet almost all of the 43 practitioners of the Masquinado in Toledo. And I finally had to start saying no, because everybody wanted to see the helmet. And they said, and that's really, I got a credit. That worked. That's what opened that door. None of them believed, that anybody in the world could still do this. And that if somebody in the world could still do this, that they were outside of me. That blew them away. And I said, well, he's from Ecuador. They said that doesn't count. So this is Antonia's niece trying it on, and this is Oscar's maestro, who's about 80 years old, trying on the helmet as well. I have a video of it that I will not show you. Because I promised him I would not. But this is one of their workshops. And I took it, this is Antonia's workshop, but it's gorgeous. The setups that they have, everything that they need. So you see a couple of setups for the ball here, the piece that's being worked on. They're using some modern techniques. So obviously it's changed over time, and with some modern manufacturing techniques, they can imitate the Masquinado, but they can't directly replicate it. And so part of what I learned was how to tell the fake stuff from the real stuff. And actually, an idiot could do that because you look at the price tag. But no, as far as recognizing it. But so they've come up with this way of using acids to prepare the pieces, and you see here, this is actually, and just like here, this is a strip of, it's a magnet that's holding the steel down for them to work on. But this is a piece of Antonia. So this is a plate, it's about 20 centimeter plate for the Canadians. All right, 20 centimeter plate, which is about 8 inches or so. This is one of Antonia's work, and Antonia is she is a maestra, and she does amazing wire work. So if you get this beautiful shift, she does her favorite is the Arabic style, and so if you look close, this is all individually put in wires, gold wire. In these beautiful geometric patterns. So I was very pleased that she was the one teaching me the wire. This is another piece of hers, just a little amphora, maybe this tall here, zooming in on some of the detail that she's putting into this. Just phenomenal work, and it's gilt on the inside, a la York. If you haven't seen that beautiful dune cup at York in the next room, please take some time. So Oscar agreed to teach me, and it's kind of funny because he was very conscious of how little time I had. So I showed up in Spain. He said, I'll meet you at the train station. So I showed up in Spain. I stayed in Madrid for a day or two so I could spend some time in the Royal Army and get used to the 9-hour time change. And then I go over to Toledo. I arrived at Toledo at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Oscar picks me up at the train station. And I think he's going to take me to, I'm going to check into the room that I rented. We'll get going in the morning or whatever. So no, he takes me to the apartment that I rented. I check in, and he immediately walks me to his shop and starts it on this. So by that time, it's like 5 o'clock in the evening. We went till 2 in the morning, the very first night. He says, okay, tomorrow at 10. And I'm joking. I said, not earlier? He says, no, I have to be with my daughter. Okay, at 10 o'clock. So it was the same every day. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd meet at his shop, and we would go till about 1 or 2 in the morning, and we'd take about an hour and a half break, for siesta. He'd go see his daughter, and I'd eat and or crash. And we did that every day except Sunday for the entire time that I was there. So it was a lot more than and wonderful, but a lot more than I had anticipated. This is some of his work here. So Antonia is a master of the Arabic style, of the geometric or the wire work. Oscar does Renaissance style, and his work is in foil and then the decoration of the foil. So let me actually pass. I really desperately need these pieces back. Not because they're expensive, but because they belong to my wife. So let me pass a couple pieces back. But are around a couple of different ways. This is an example. These are done by Antonia. And I'm going to pass this one around. This is one of her masterworks. So I'm going to pass this one around with a set of loops. Remember that everything was done in wire? Take a look at this closely through the loop as it comes around, right? And if you're willing, if you're inclined, and see some of the detail work and the precision that she's doing. But also another piece of her work here with the geometric Arabic pattern. But he does the Renaissance style, which is really what I was interested in. So I spent most of my time working with him. So here's another one of his plates. And this is one of his favorite things. He does a number of religious themes, but one of his favorite themes is Toledo. So the same picture, or same view of Toledo. A little bit stylized. But this is, if he sees that I have rust on this, he will kill me. So this never gets back to Oscar. This is some of his work as well. And I just did a close-up of one of the pieces of his, and this is a piece, this is in silver actually, the color doesn't show very well. But you can see some of the detail he's getting into, whatever this is, chicken, cockatrice, whatever, and the leaf work that he's doing. And this is exactly what I want. And you see a little bit of wire accenting here, right? This is exactly what I want in this particular style. So this is where I spent the vast majority of my time. So I said, to show you the process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through Diane de Montel's Lion of Antir chain. Is one of the things I'm most proud of. He's a really, really remarkable man. And that was the only thing I was upset at Eric for, is that he beat me to giving him Diane the Lion by 6 months. So I gave it to his wife. So the first thing you do with any project, of course, is you come up with a design. And so I started coming up with this. I said, what about a chain of states? There's some really good ones now. 3 years ago, nobody was wearing a chain of states. But these are beautiful period pieces, especially for his 14th century Norman persona. What can I do that means something to him? And I started going through his list of awards, and it'd be like Master Eduardo going through his list of awards and giving him something that represents each award that he's had. I mean, I'm not going to live that long, right? So I take a piece that means something significant to him. Have Ugo do a Repoussé lion, and then he's triple peer, right? So his laurel, his pelican, and then maybe something from his family members. So you start by taking the steel. It's 16 gauge mild steel. You want soft steel because you're going to have to manipulate it. And actually, you're going to have to cut it. And so I mounted it in PET, which is pitch, right? And so this is actually we spent an entire day learning how to make pitch, which is basically brick dust, pine resin, and a little bit of olive oil that are stirred together and heated and then cooled. And they would cool it in a big brick. So when I came home, I made some. I found these little bread tins, these little aluminum bread tins. I don't know, you can cook a loaf of bread, right? And I'm like, that's perfect. So you put that in water, or immerse that in something cold, and then you pour the pet in there, and it freezes like that. And then anytime you need more, you take one down, you break it open, and you just melt it to where you want. So it was a good thing. But this is me starting to score the piece. So you're taking a piece of steel, and you're going to score it. Now, originally, and this is how Oscar did it, he said take a file, because it's this hard steel, right, and make a knife. So I made a knife out of a couple of files, and I started, and I have stepping stone and the oil next to me, and you can imagine that when you're cutting lines in steel, it goes dull pretty quickly. And there's a very distinct change when you feel it. Cut, and then starts to scrape. We don't want scraping, we want cutting, right? So your goal is to, now here you see a cross-hatched piece. So this is actually pretty good, right? It's a lot prettier now. And this is a bottle cap for size comparison. So it's a one inch round piece. This is one of these here, right? And you want to cross-hatch it super fine and super close. And what this does is, imagine the surface of the steel now. So imagine the surface of the steel now has these sharp rows crisscrossing each other, so you end up with these sharp fingers of steel sticking up. And then here you can see I started to do some wire with it. So let's go here. Let's fire this up, and I'll show you on one of these pieces. I'll show you a little bit of how to do. Let's just use this side here. How to do some wire.
Did you hit the camera?
Oh, thank you.
Fingers.
There we go. All right. So I'm going to actually move this just a little bit. Oh no, we'll do it on this one. That's fine. And you say, oh, that's not very good.
Fingers. Four fingers. Oh. Something in the way.
Aha.
Ah. Pretty slowly.
Can we kill the lights for a minute?
Lights?
I'm afraid it's fine enough work. I mean, maybe you got a better view than I do. That's effectively a bad idea. That way, we go back to more light.
More light.
More light on your workpiece.
Yeah, if somebody got a flashlight or something that works.
Oh.
Right.
I've got a light on.
Well, there you go.
I got one. Okay. I can turn on my flash.
Yeah, I know.
There,
It's
So it's camera action, right? Kill the lights. So when I have this, I have a piece.
There we go.
Oh.
So I have a piece of very, very, very fine gold thread or gold wire here, right? So I have this little piece here, which is designed to press it in. So here's my scored, and now I've blackened it. You can blacken it later. I chose to blacken it ahead of time so you can see the contrast a little bit better. So I lay it where I want it, and I'm going to press it in if I can see it. And I'm going to start walking it. Yeah, so I got a little bit there, so it's okay, I'll make that longer. I broke it off a little too early. Now I'll say, well, okay, I got a set piece in, but I want to change it here. I want to take it here, I want to go straight down. So I can adjust it. This, by the way, is a Damascus ball, is what they call it. At Vic's here, there's actually an English name for it. But it's about 400 years old, and I'm pretty sure they made it from a cannonball. And it's super handy. So I can take it. Start the wire going down. If I want to turn it a little bit, I just change the angle.
You're filming this, we can only see your hands moving?
Yeah, it's great to see your hands. We're coming from another direction.
Okay.
Now we can see it.
So I just took where am I going? Here, right? There we go. So I just took a wire and I just made a little shape. And you can make whatever shape you want. If you focus on here, for example. So here I've done more. I've started a couple. So I've started a couple of geometric pieces here, or a geometric piece here. And if you look carefully, you can see here that the two major ones are actually double wire. So you see how close I put it to get it to go together. So when I lay that on, at this point it's still modifiable. If I wanted to, I could still, sometimes if you do it poorly, you can use your finger to get rid of it. Now, fortunately, I did it well because I played this game before. But you can, if I wanted to, I can take it. Oh, this is the trick I was going to show you, by the way. I decided early on I very much hate sharpening. So I happen to be a doctor, and so I have access to scalpels. Which is really good steel, is what we're going to say that. And when it gets dull, they're like 10 cents a piece per blade. So at this point, I can, if I'm interested, I can get rid of it. You see, I just took a little section out there. So I made a mistake. Oh, I'll take that up. Obviously, you don't want to, score it too badly. But and so that's how you lay the wire. And so you lay the wire. And the reason I laid the wire here doubly is because when it comes together, it's going to be a thicker line. And it's not going to be this. I can make a super fine line, or I can make a thicker line. And when you make a thicker line, you can do things with it. You can chase over the top of it, for example. So, the next step in creating this piece was to do the foil work. So you see here, I got the pieces set in the pitch, and I've started to, I've done a bunch of, like, this is Sir Philip de Montel, not Sir Philip at the time, right? This is his device. He has a sleeping lion. This is his brother, Seamus de Montel. He's got a dragon, all in the same style as their father, right, with the salamander. So these are all in an inch, so forgive me, it's early work too. I can do better than this now. But the scarp counter changed and things. So I started, I'll start filling in with the foil. So you see, here's a piece of the foil, the gold foil placed over the top. Now, the gold foil has to be specific thickness. So at first, when I got back, I said, I can mill my own, right? So I have a rolling mill, but rolling mill I can take it down to real close to 60 microns, give or take a little bit more on a cold roll. You can hot roll it down to about 40 microns, but this needs to be about 5, 6, or 7 microns. So I said, no problem, right? I do calligraphy and illumination. I'll use gold leaf, which, by the way, is 0.3 to 0.5 microns. So there's a good story here too. So I said, where am I getting it? Because I had a little bit to work with that he sent me home with. And I said, I got, I want to work on this. But I need some of this. I cannot get the foil. So I'm going all around. What I found is a bunch of industrial applications or chemical applications where it's exactly how thick you want it to within a bazillionth of a micron. Almost made atom by atom, right? For these high-tech industrial applications, and it's like $200 for a 1.5 by 1.5 inch square of this stuff. And I said, well, that's gold, but it's not that expensive, right? So I said, so I call back to Spain, and I say, Oscar, I need some of this stuff. And so he said, no problem. He hooked us up. He's got a supplier. So he tries to send it to me. He emails me back and says, you can't send this. And what do you mean you can't send this? And so I start looking in. The United States does not allow the import of semi-manufactured goods. I can import raw materials, and I can import a finished piece, but I cannot import a semi-manufactured good because, goddammit, that takes jobs away from people in the United States who are apparently not manufacturing this anyway. So fortunately, how are we going to do this? I'm not going to fly back to Spain yet. So fortunately, Kalja and Bain and Celeste and even Olin were happened to be in Italy at the time. And so I said, Oscar, can you send it to Italy? He says, yeah, no problem. It's all EU. So I sent it I called the hotel in Milan. No, it's Florence. Call the hotel in Florence, and said, I'm going to send you this. And he's going to pick it up. And they said, okay. And I'm like, really? And the hotel we were not staying. We were renting apartments. So we had no friends really to pick them. So I sent it to this high-end, how much was it for a night? Four Seasons, yeah. Yeah, it says the Four Seasons is 600 euros a night. 600 euros a night, right? So what is that, close to $1,000 a night on the exchange, right? Anyway, so they were very happy to take care of it for me. So Bain did not smuggle it back. He declared it. And, well, he told me he declared it. Not sure about how he answered the did anybody pack anything for you question. No. So I bought it up and he came back with it. So when you take the foil, when you lay the foil in, now this is a nice example of a very easy way because I have a finely defined line here, right, where I laid the wire down, and I can put foil there, or actually even go across it a little bit, and then bring it back up, right? But if I want to do a piece of foil, these I ended up doing as foil as well, but you have to cut it. So how do you cut foil? Anybody ever tried to cut a gold leaf with scissors? And that is joy. Right, I breathe on it.
Oh, that's the very thing?
Heavier than that, but still pretty, not very substantial. So, and certainly I don't want a bunch of oils and things like that on it while I'm doing it. And so they make a troquel, which is essentially they make their own punches. And so they'll make their own punches in whatever shape they want. So they take a piece of, and he showed me how to do this, take a piece of 1/8 inch steel, a big 1/8 inch bar of steel, and take a jeweler saw and cut yourself the shape that you want. And then you put a piece of steel over it. You get a piece of lead, right? And you sandwich the gold leaf and the silver leaf between some tissue paper and some things to protect everything. And then this just protects the troquel, so I'm not beating the crap out of the troquel with my ball peen hammer. And pound, pound, pound. I won't pass this around because it's lead. You'll have to wash your hands. And you come out and you have multiple layers. I can cut, if it's not a terribly complex thing, I can cut 4 of the exact same shape at the same time with it. And I remember learning this on the second day going, that was freaking worth the entire trip. Right there. And for some of the real small things, you know, I just got a piece of a bar stock from Home Depot and then soldered on some small pieces. So this is, for example, a little ermine spot, a little triangle bottom of an ermine spot that I was using for my King's Guard tokens, right? And then other pieces that are just teeny tiny. Like this one was for the laurel leaves, tiny little things. I just chink, you know, and then boom, I got 4 of them, and they're exactly the same. And it sounds stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. Turns out there are. So I was in Spain. I said, well, what if I want to do what if I want to do, you know, like 2 things? So I was thinking in my mind all these questions. What if I want to do 2 things facing each other? He said, no, he said, really? And I said, yes. How do you get the troquel the exact same? And he takes the piece of foil and he goes, and he's like, you're a doctor? I'm like, shut up, I'm not changing. So let's go ahead and switch cameras again. I'm gonna get a piece of the foil.
I got one. There's like, I got my own. Okay. It's very bad.
Alright. So presumably gonna come. So focus on my hand here. You got light? Alright. So here's a piece as it comes out. So this is, as you see, it's like a pelican. It's a pelican, right? So I take there's a thicker one, and then there's a piece of foil, or sorry, a piece of more like tissue. I take the tissue off, and here it is in silk. So I have a couple of other pieces in the back. I have to try and separate them. Then I have another piece of tissue, blah, blah, blah. So carefully trying to separate. So now this could use a little cleaning, but let's take the time. So what I'm going to do is put it on this piece here. And now I have, you saw how I did the wire. So this is a piece of foil, and it's actually easier. So what I do is I take a little piece of, just a tiny little piece of wooden dowel, maybe like half-inch dowel, one of the hammers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to press the foil. You see how it cleans up a little bit?
No.
Oh. So some of the feather details.
So how's it sticking to the steel?
Well, because what I've done is I've already scored the
steel. Okay.
I scored the steel. So now if you were here, well, I'm not doing a great job, but you get the idea. So now I have the piece of silver loosely pressed into the steel, right, in the shape of the pelican, right, sitting on the net. Well, we were detailed. So now you can actually see the cross hatching. You can see the cross hatching in it because I pressed it into the steel underneath, right? So clearly I don't want that to end up like that. So so this is a saying, oh, I messed up, I can still lift this out, right? I can still cut this piece off. Oh, there was a piece that didn't quite cut very well. I'm gonna cut that off with a scalpel blade or whatever. So, but now I'm gonna say, let's move over here. Now I'm gonna say, okay, so now let's go to this piece here. Okay. So now this piece has just been pushed down just like that, right? So now when I'm ready, for everything to be completely, I said, okay, I got it exactly the way I want. I don't know if you can see the detail enough, but here's the double, I guess you can't on a couple of them. You can see this is a double line of wire, right? So I want it a little thicker on that part of the stem. I have like a little teeny tiny stem up the top that's just a single wire, for example. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to start walking it down the piece. So now I'm taking a piece of steel and hitting the gold into the steel. So you can see, it's not only smoothed down, but you no longer see that there's two wires, right? So you can't put them right next to each other because they don't sit well. You actually give them a space in between, and then you can see that now I have two that you can barely tell, if I do it right, that it looks like a single piece of wire now, and it's wider, right? And you do the same with the, you there? Ish? There we go. You do the same with the foil. So let's say, okay, this particular one this part didn't make it, didn't survive the trip. So if I had more time, what I do is I take the scalpel and I say this rose and this rose I like. This rose is an awkward rose, so I'm going to change it. So I'm going to cut off this side so it matches. Maybe I turn it into a bud now or something, right? So I can still modify it until I start doing this way. And that won't come off now. So this is beyond the point where I can modify it. Or let me phrase that, where I can take it off if I don't want it. I mean, if you work hard enough, you can get it off. But that's obviously not what I'm talking about. All right, let's switch back. No, right. That's a great point. Yeah, so that's very good eye for that. So I'm not walking it. If anybody because when you walk it, you can imagine whether it's worked with the wire or worked with something that they're doing it, you're going to start folding it. And I don't want to fold it, I want to smash it like this. Right? I want it where it is. I worked kind of hard to get it to where it is, so I'm coming up every time and coming down on top of it with the hammer. Yes, so very good observation, actually.
What's the thickness of the wire?
38 gauge. So here's me cutting one of the fleur de lis shells for these plates here. So that's 1/8" steel bar and just a standard jeweler saw setup. And again, I don't have a lot of spare time, so here's me in my work shirt with my cufflinks. Like this is probably taken between. Somebody made fun of me on Facebook for this, I think. So there's the finished fleur de lis troquel. And I cut it so that they fit together, hopefully nicely, in force. So here's me putting, so I've done the edging on 2 of those pieces. And you see a little bit of wire work where I said this is the exact middle, this is the exact middle. I want to use this line partly for decoration and partly to tell me where exactly the hell I am. And I'm laying the pieces down here. So here's the part where, okay, so now I've done a little bit of fancy work here, with the wires, but really all this is now at this point, and here's a good example. You can do the same thing in negative, right? So I have this tree troquel that I can make a tree, or in this particular case, make the negative of the tree because it matches the waistkeep. If you didn't know, Diane de Montel was the founding baron of waistkeep. So here's the waistkeep symbol. So now at this point, that's the term for it in Spanish is tomatear, and that's when I'm fixing it down onto the steel where I can't modify it anymore. This is where I was going to demonstrate that process. So this point, all I've done is I've fixed the gold and/or the silver and the wire to the steel. All right, and so it has this look to it, which I think is pretty, but it's not this. All right, so now I'm putting a little bit more detail into it, and so this is the chasing process. So when I go to do some work, I have all these tools, and I know time-wise I gotta keep it down just a little bit here. And that's the real difference between a lot of the cheap stuff insulato, a lot of the cheap Damascene, and the real high-end stuff, like, where's that, like this plate, or especially the box. So you might know where's the box right now. No. But look at some of the detail work that they use to give a three-dimensional effect, like the feathers of the double-headed, or the two-headed eagle, right? So it really adds a tremendous dimension. This is a Gothic style piece, also by Oscar, which doesn't use the chasing style, but their word for it is repassar, which just means to go over again, right? Repass. So, and so you can start adding a little bit of details in. And this is a particularly fun. So this is a roping process where you take a strip. This is a practice piece. Where you take strips, and the top 4 are 24 karat gold, and this is a yellow gold, 1 silver, and this is a neat trick that I learned. I like to use the silver. They don't very often because it tarnishes. And you can see the clear difference. When I put it on, it was exactly the same as those bottom 4. This is aluminum foil, which gives you a beautiful silver look, but does not tarnish. And so they use a lot of aluminum instead of silver now. I'll pass that around. But you can see me practicing some of the different techniques. And in order to do this roping, and here I'm getting a little, this is early, I get a little better at it. But in order to do the roping, it was, it's like a 7-step process. After you get it all on, you go over with 1 tool, then you shade, and then you put a little bit of texture in, and then you pop out the cords, and then it's just really, it's a lot of fun. But that was one of the things I knew I wanted to do, so I made him spend almost an entire day showing me how to do that particular one. Then these pieces here are not blackened yet. Now, this is a good point. So if you look at, like this piece that I did for my wife, that she stepped down in, right? Because she said all good Spanish Renaissance women have to wear a cross. And I said, well, then it better well be gold. So I did this one for her. These are actually trochels also, that are just designed to fit together. So this is one little 1 centimeter by about a half a centimeter not worky trochel, and the rest is wire work. Right? And they're designed to fit together into this pattern. Or you can use it separate or change the pattern, right? But some of the beautiful work of the trochel. So, but this one you see is quite different. The look of the gold here is quite different than here. And it's not just burnishing. The difference is, with this one, I put everything on and I blackened it and then I chased it. I repassed it. With this one, I did the repasse first and then blackened it. And that adds a little bit of depth to the blackening, so you get a little bit of oxidation, and it gives us this cool antique look. So this is what they do, and Oscar told me never to do this because it makes it look old. And his goal is to not make it look old. I thought that would be my goal. So, so I wrote that down. And I wrote down a lot. All the things that they're trying to teach me. It may be entertaining if you're interested to go through this a little bit. So anyway, so I repassed it before I blackened it. When you blacken, they use a Renaissance old recipe. And they boil it. They put all this stuff in there. And I'm trying to find, what is this? What is this? It's live. Okay, sodium hydroxide. So okay, I get some of the stuff that they're using. What else are you using? Well, we're using some of this. I don't know what that is. I got to translate that. I said, what? And I said, what is this? And they said, it's salt. It's salt. And I said, it's salt. And I can't remember what I said. It was from Czechoslovakian salt. And I said, we need Czechoslovakian salt. And I found, and they said, use it for meat. And it's a curing meat. It's Prague salt. They use the sodium nitrite and Prague salt to mix it in as well. And so you get this mix of chemicals. I'm sure I'm on some Homeland Security list. You get these mix of chemicals and you start boiling, and here's just a little wire with those. I have the holes punched out already because I don't want it shiny inside the holes, right? You punch the holes first, and then dip it into this stuff, and it blackens right up. And then you wash it off. I actually have a sequence. This is just the last one, but it's blackening. It's blackening, water, denature alcohol to neutralize whatever's left of the solution. So dip, rinse, neutralize, and dry quickly. If you've ever done blackening, it rusts, and you're trying to get it to oxidize, right? So you just want it to oxidize black. So here I'm taking the pieces out. Here's the pieces, and you can see now, I love the contrast. As soon as you blacken, that gold and the silver just pops like crazy. Thank you very much. And so now I have the pieces all laid out, and here I connected them with this 18 karat gold chain, which I thought looked beautiful. So I thought, and it was funny because I had done this, and I just won crown when I gave it to Diane. And so I said, what a unique opportunity. I will probably never have the opportunity to wear a lion and all three peerages on the same thing, but damn it, I'm king. This is my chance and my only chance. I'm taking it. So Becca takes this picture. And she took a whole bunch of corny pictures. But I thought it laid really nice. I thought it had kind of the look, especially this one here, the kind of the look of what I wanted this chain to see. But as it turns out, that 18 karat gold chain in thicknesses that I could afford is pretty fragile. So Diane he really loved it and he appreciated it. But I overheard him refer to it as not his chain of state, but his chain of maintenance. And I said, damn, I can't have that, of course. So I said, I took it all apart, and you see the pieces up here, and I got a bunch of these beautiful bronze quatrefoil links from Pembroke, and put it together with that. And I really think that finally came out nice. So what's next? So we're aware of the, 5 minutes. 5 minutes is perfect. So we're aware of the armor project, as it were. So this is exactly what I want to do. So here's the mask furniture piece, Arlos V. Here's my helmet. And as you see in the pieces here, if you were at my presentation at Madronas Arts and Sciences Championship, for example, you see pieces here where there's clearly a nice protective lip and a flat area protected, and here, for example, or places that are just absolutely screaming at the masking. and so you can see some of the pieces that we use for inspiration here, where they're doing the same type of thing. And so that's one of the reasons I was trying to get those close-up shots. Thank you so much to all the second graders in Madrid that volunteered their hustle through the Royal Armory. It was a particularly rambunctious group that day, I'm telling you. And so that's the goal, actually. So the next goal is to take this armor now and do this technique, like the mask garniture, like the Negroli pieces. And it was Negroli's cousin, by the way, Francesco Negroli, who did brother. Francesco, was he? Sorry. Anyway, who did the damascening for the shop? But he was so good. Carlos V, after he got a couple of the pieces, took him to be the court damascener for 2 or 3 years, and that's actually why we have the records of how much they paid his replacement, which was like 6 ducats a year. So that's the goal, actually, is to take the entire set and do it in a full reproduction. So this will all be in gold, and then some of the nice touches, maybe a little bit of extra gold up here and in the armband. So we designed from the very beginning. We designed the suit with that in mind. So this is the back end of the Royal Palace, and they say you should never put pictures of your family in your presentations, but I disagree. Because she's so beautiful. So the prettiest part of the presentation is here. So,
and she just
thank you very much. I really appreciate your attention. I'll be happy to take questions. That's my favorite part. So I actually split it up. So the very first time I went for about 3 weeks. And actually the first time I went to Spain was for 6 months, and I got to do something there. And then I went very specifically and exclusively for damascening, and that one was for 3 weeks. And the plan is to go back and do some more. In fact, I just sent him some pictures of the stuff I'm working on now, and he's giving me advice still. I really want to go back, because you know how it is when you're learning something. I learned a ton, and it was very frustrating in that style of learning, because, you know, really for 14, 16-hour days every day, you know, break for lunch and stuff like that, a cup of coffee. They're so funny about that coffee. But the breaks, but it was, okay, stop now. And I'm like, well, I'm not really good at it yet. He says, you don't have time to practice, I have to show you the next thing. so I get these pieces where I'm practicing this technique, I'm practicing that technique, I'm changing it up a little, see how it looks. And he says, I don't have time to get good at it. I'm going to teach you the technique and we're going to move to the next technique. And so he was really giving me that really accelerated kind of course. So expecting that I'd go home and spend 2 years trying to work it out, which I did.
So when are you writing the book?
What an excellent question. Now, one thing I forgot to put in the piece is, or that I hinted out a little bit, was I was looking for some resources on how to do it, and there are none. There are none. Even in the top tier goldsmithing books in the world, like Broppel, for example, the German, the one that was only translated like 15 years ago into English, but is the Bible for goldsmithing. There's a mention of it, like a paragraph, and not how to do it. And I had a little picture, and this is often done in space, or something like that, a little paragraph. And I found one that showed some examples, like the Mycenaean examples, where I found that, and it had like a page on it. And so that was part of the problem. And he'd show me these things, and he says, "Now you can't." He's Matteo with his maestro. You can't tell Matteo I showed you this. Don't tell him I showed you this. Don't tell him I showed you this. Don't tell him I showed you this. And it's because for so long they've gone and, you know, you saw that store. There's people making it, you know, but there's not that many. But you know, they want to be the ones that are doing this. Don't teach, don't show anybody that, or don't tell. No, he didn't say that. He said, don't tell my teacher that I showed you. And so all these techniques that we're learning are really passed down from teacher to student, or teacher to one or two students over the course of years. And Oscar's been doing it for 20 years. He started at 17 years. And I think the way he said it, his parents decided it was either this or jail. And so they got him into this. But I can relate. I got one of those boys. But I'd like to, if I spend enough time, I get good enough. But I think that's one of the reasons they agreed to teach me. They really wanted this to not die out. I mean, it's very telling where nobody under the age of 40 is doing this right now. Now, the youngest guy just turned 40, and so and there's not enough people. So hopefully,
How do you plan on getting over the supply problem?
No, that's an excellent question.
You can keep sending me the I would gladly do that.
I would definitely gladly, and I did buy a pretty substantial amount.
You can tell me.
I did buy a pretty substantial amount, so I wouldn't have to go back too soon. But I found one gold leaf manufacturer, Golden Leaf Products in Oceanside. And I just got this like 2 weeks ago. They said, okay, here's a test piece. Tell me if that's the right size for you. I've been on the phone all over, and so I haven't opened it. I'm very anxious to open this up. And if that's the case, then I will have a U.S. supplier. If not, I will bite the bullet and go back to Spain.
Oh, geez.
How I suffer.
I have a question.
Don't even know.
Exploring that you originally did, does that continue to stay, or when you go through the process of blackening?
What a great question. So does it continue to stay? Well, you can look up here and you can still see some evidence of scoring. And where's that beautiful piece? And when Ugo and I were discussing it, the dolphin, here we are. So we're looking at pieces, and this is a close-up of one that was done for the King of France. But we looked at this picture specifically because on that picture you can still see faint evidence of the scoring that they used. So yes, it stays, but I'm here and I can't see any evidence of it here. I'm here, maybe just barely starting to see evidence of it, you know, and I get really close, and I can see where it was. right? But the act of changing, and it depends on how much black you've got in the background. Like that plate, for example, or some of the small. I mean, there's not a lot of blackness left. I mean, this one is almost all covered in gold. Tiny little bits of black in and around the fine wire work, right? That you can still see.
Is that why they're doing the sort of acid base now modernly?
No, the reason they're doing the acid base is because it's faster and they can mass produce. So what they'll do is they have these forms. I mean, you'll see it a lot. The people who are making the steel pieces will mass produce these steel pieces for them. We'll make a whole bunch of this style earring piece for them, right? And they'll have these earring kits and stuff they'll just attach it to, right? Or some cufflinks, for example, or whatever. But and so they'll mass produce it. And I can show you pictures another time or afterwards. But instead of individually cutting them all, what you do is you take 100 pieces and you put it in a basket. And there's this process. I have a video of them dipping it into the nitric, neutralizing back into nitric until they had it exactly the way they wanted it. And then you also have the entire piece is prepped for it. Now, one thing about that is that it really makes this dark blackening when you pit the steel first. You got a ton more surface area for oxidation, and the blackening is really deep. And you actually make it too deep. You're showing me how to make it less matte. If we wanted to.
Your Excellency, I apologize. We are now past 5 o'clock, and we need to get ready for court.
Thank you very much, you guys. Nice to meet you.